Good day. Yeah, the session has just started. I see there's three people that joined so far. I think I'm going to wait a bit for more people to join. But yeah, this is our breakout room where we're going to have a discussion about the two scenarios that was presented beforehand. We just wait a bit and yeah, then we'll get started. Give it maybe, let's give it 4 more minutes and then yeah, we'll start. Yeah, I see more people are joining now. It's good. It's good. I'm just checking if more people are joining, and then yeah, we can get started on the discussion. I think at 20 past, we'll be good to go. Hello, Kenneth. How are you doing? I'm good. I'm good. Thanks, Kenneth. Um, when the session starts, we'll gladly we can take up to 10 people on the stage, and then we can have a discussion here and get to know each other, and yeah, discuss the case studies and learn a lot from each other. Okay, give it 1 more minute, and I think then we can start um, the discussion. Okay, let me start the session, so long, and yeah, so the purpose of the session is to encourage discussion on the two topics and case studies that took place previously, and just to gain your insights for us to learn from each other, and yeah, just to have a good environment to have a conversation. And I want to get you guys thinking, and I'll ask you guys a few questions, and then I think it's then it'd be cool for us to brainstorm some keywords that we got from the presentations. So I'll gladly, you guys can be invited on stage. We can have a discussion and carry on with that. I think Charlotte, you guys can indicate if you want to come on stage, if you want to chat, and Charlotte uh, will put you on stage for us. Um, Let me ask you guys, you can really also talk in chat. Let's start with the first case study, which is that Makalong Youth Project Hub there in Tembisa. Um, As you listen to this case study, what did you hear about the complexity arising from, the interrelationships and the absence of relationships between the different elements and stakeholders? I'd gladly like to hear your opinions and to discuss with me and also discuss with others in this chat. Feel free to ask questions and comment. Would you guys like me to maybe display some of the slides for you? Me to facilitate your discussion. Kenneth, can I ask you if you would want to come on stage and maybe chat a bit on what do you think is the complexities arising from these projects, in your opinion? Also, feel free to post in the chat. Uh, I also have as an interactive tool. If you guys can share some keywords that you got from it, I can post it in the chat, and then I can show you guys the ideas you guys are pulling from it, and then we can brainstorm and have a discussion on it. Let me share the school Mentimeet in the chat. Then we can, yeah, it would be very cool to see your guys' opinions. You can add some keywords. I'll maybe give a question. You guys give me some keywords summarizing what you think about complexities coming up in these projects. We'll firstly handle the Makalong Youth project in Tembisa. Let me share a link here in the chat. So it's going to take you to the Mentimeter website where you can enter keywords that comes to mind according to the questions I ask. I'll share my screen on what pops up, and then we'll brainstorm and see what comes up. You guys can join in on that links along, and on the first presentation, the Youth Hub project. What is your insights gained from this presentation in general? The case study, I can try and share the case studies along. Gladly share it on screen, and then we can quickly run through it, and then we can have a discussion on that if that might work better. We share, select. Okay. Share it now. Okay. So this is the first one that we would want to handle on. see, sorry if I say it wrong here, but I see Mochidisi is telling us that they're struck by the fact that the project was initiated in 2016 and there's still nothing to show for it, despite the good intentions. Secondly, they didn't see the community involvement aspect. Very interesting. And what is your guys' opinion? And what do you think that is fair or not? Um, I can run through the slides and show you guys what has been what they have spoke about it so far, and then yeah, I'd gladly like your guys' discussion on that. And we also want to. You can also gladly come join me on stage here, and then you guys can also come chat on stage and share your opinions. Um, what is your opinion, Dr. Aldred, um, about the project? If you might add something, we can also gladly add you on stage. And I also shared this Mentimeter link in chat. You can also add your keywords there, and then it will generate a word cloud. Then we'll see the general consensus that we get from, yeah, this first case study. That's a good point. Dr. Aldred is telling us that conflicting aspirations by various groupings makes implementation quite difficult. And yes, yeah, I would gladly want to add you on stage. Shalette, can you maybe please add Dr. Aldred on stage? Dr. Aldred, if you can also raise your hand, then I can also see if I can put you on stage here. Ah, there we go.
I should be there now.
You're on stage. Okay, yeah, see you.
Just to expand on that, um, government is indicating that yes, we would want infrastructure as a leverage for quite a number of things, right? If you look at the Genius project and mine, right, it took quite a while to get the project off the ground. Now I know from the morning session, and I think it was Gershon that indicated that 5 years is possibly not sufficient, for instance, to have executives in place. So what sometimes happened if you only have a 5 year period, right? You start a project. It takes the project 3 years to 3 years to conceptualize, plan, and start, and then you leave if you are not retained, right, with the project at 20-30%, and someone new comes in, and the trust building process that happened before, that person now need to start, right? Because at local level, if a proper trust relationship are not built with whomever the stakeholders are, it is really difficult. So there is this outcry that we are unemployed, we want jobs, we do have skills, right? But that conflicting aspirations that I mentioned in the chat, right, is sometimes the rationale and the reason, right, that we as practitioners can't move faster than what is required by government.
Yeah, it's a very, very good and interesting insight. And yeah, definitely, trust is a core aspect to any project were to develop and to go forward. And yeah, maybe 5 years is too much of a short time. And for, you know, to get approval, or just to build that relationship and have that credibility to, get the ball rolling, as we say. And yeah, definitely is a tricky thing to manage. And yeah, if there could be more collaboration from key stakeholders, I would think some sort of financial system collaboration would also be maybe an interesting thing. because they have a lot of data on processes of businesses. Maybe if they can would share that at some point. What do you think on a
Yeah.
proposal like that?
Look, one of the things that was discussed this morning was the role of private sector as an example. So
Yeah.
my thesis is that the private sector is involved by virtue of having a, a contractor and consultants, right, appointed for a project, means the private sector is there. How we leverage on
Mm.
them and their associations is a different thing. All right. So I know Jonathan spoke about uh, the political interest this morning as well. So at times, right, and it comes back to that 5 year period, and I think Lisa also somehow uh, spoke about that 5 year period, not just of officials but also political system, all right, and each one, and that is what I dislike about what they call leaving legacies, right? So your legacy will not become my legacy when I'm in the frame in 5 years' time, as an example, right? So that confluence period, right, makes it even more difficult. All right. So it's good and good and well to say that the project is not delivered in time. All right. But if you look at the political, let's call it hijacks that happen at local level, right? Then it makes it even more difficult because most officials, although they're professional, all right, they want to do the work, they are kept back by certain political interests, right? Just yesterday or over the weekend here in Buffalo City, right, where the acting city manager shot at, right, and he was is wounded in the arm,
Mm.
his car is riddled with bullets, right? And there is a type of interest groups that are at play at local level, right? And I'm not sure from a systemic process, right, how do one properly engage and respond to these things, right? Because some of these things from an official level seem just to be out of control there. You don't have control over that, right? What you've got control over is the systems that you should put in place, right? So that realities at times are not looked at when we put forward this notion that we are too slow, but the response, right, to that slowness from other tiers of government is also not assisting at local level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally understand your viewpoint, and yeah, it's other people also gladly can share their opinion here in chat, and you also come on stage if you agree or disagree, or you have additional insight on it. But yes, it is a tricky thing to manage. You've got the plans on the upper level, and for it to enact on the local municipal level with a certain political structures and incentives, it is a tricky thing to manage. And like you said, there needs to be the proper systems to in place to, yeah, incentivize the development and the progress on these projects that we want. What structures do you think might need to be in place? Uh, like you said before.
It's possibly difficult to indicate what structures, and I want to go back to I can't remember what's his name now from the World Bank, Colin. All right, Colin spoke about
Mm.
creative procurement, right? So if one look at the project that me and my team implemented, yes, it took long for the municipality to decide on whether they are giving us a project or not. But you'll see the timelines then between getting the approvals right and the implementation starting has been shorter than the tedious process of municipal decision making, and that is virtually by politicians, right? So to get the system right, so if you compare the project in terms of let's give up the term construction mafia. If you look at the construction mafia and their forceful way of closing and demanding projects around the country, we de-risk this project by having them in the fray. We had them as part of the discussions, the planning processes, and eventually in the procurement process. So we made it, for those that don't understand construction processes, there's normally a compulsory briefing session uh, after the tender or before the tender process start for main contractors. So we invited your SMMEs to this compulsory briefing session, and we had this what we call a social contract with them to say that in our workshop with you, you now know about our project. Come to the briefing session, and only those that are listed on the briefing session attendance register, if they are fully compliant, will be considered for the job. So that was our social contracting, and it was agreed. And there are different tiers of SMMEs. So you have SMMEs at ward level. Then there's SMMEs that belong to some region or sub-region, and then a region. So the highest structure is a hierarchy, is referred to as a Buffalo City Business Forum, as an example, right? So at that level, we created this social contract to say that who then out of this information sessions, engagements, etc., whoever makes it into the last part of the process, right? It will only be them that will be utilized, and anyone else therefore has got no legitimate request to be involved because they would have been outside of the process. So that created some de-risking, but obviously we don't always have control over how the contractor pay the SMMEs. And the two incidents that I'm referring to in my presentation as an example, right, are not because of anything else other than payment not provided on time. Unlike in other projects where people come and they demand 30%, which we have already assigned in terms of packages for those that were qualifying, right? So there is a type of system that we've put in place. If I compare with Eugenie and other projects that I've been involved in where this was not applied, this can nearly act as a baseline to say if we follow this process, it's a tedious one, all right, but it's a necessary one. That then becomes a mechanism or a response system, all right, to external influences that may delay projects.
Yeah,
I'm not sure whether it makes
it
sense.
sounds like a very yeah, it does make sense. Yes, it sets some sort of precedent. People that have to be early in the process, and if they're accounted for, then and if they go through the process and go through all the steps, then they would be a part of the project or not, like you said. And what might the challenges be? I see here's a question that sorry, that's the previous question at the piano, but yeah, what might you says it's a longer process. Do you think there might be something in conflict then with that? You know, the 5 years. Do you think that proposal might extend the building process? Do you think will make it faster for the projects?
Look, the moment you know, and I'm not sure how many people in this room works in the planning sort of world, so to speak. So normally municipalities has got what is called the spatial development framework, which are
Mm.
broken into LSDF's local spatial development frameworks that are broken into what we call precinct, and precincts has got different projects. All right. So if you know that here's at London, it's London Beachfront LSDF, and you know that you're going to interact in that space, the moment you know that, you need to start engaging, right, with the communities out there, and not just the ones of. So the first part, and the IAP2, because some of you are still scholars, IAP2 is the International Association of Public Participation. They advise that for proper decision making, we go through different levels of participation. So the first one is normally inform, which is a one-sided process. The second one is consult, all right, where we come and say, this is what we propose, what is your views, right? And that is where South Africa currently sits. The third one uh, talks about involving communities. The last one talks about collaboration. So collaboration is nearly there's a space, no one knows what to do, you engage, right, and you build a process with whomever that are there up until the project is fully complete. The fifth one is what is called protest. So if all four fails in decision making, then people protest. So it's no wonder in South Africa, if we sit at the level of consult, all right, that there are so many protests because people feel that they are not involved or there's no proper collaboration. So when we hear officials as well as politicians talk about consultation, right? They define they define the conflict that will emanate from there because they're not collaborating. So these terms are used very superficially, but in the deeper sense of it, right, in terms of decision making, if we don't from the start collaborate, right, then we sit with the problem of people wanting to storm sites, close this, do that, protest, etc. All right. So what I'm then proposing is that no, don't involve people, don't inform people, don't consult with people, collaborate with people, and then through that process you de-risk projects.
You guys are free to share your opinions, and also there's this Mentimeter link in the chat. You can add as much keywords and insights you get, and it's cool. We get this, yeah, word cloud on it. But Dr. Elliot, do you think institutions like the IDC can? It seems like it's kind of in their mandate. Do you think they must expand their mandate, or you think it's some sort of failure on their side? Um,
Quite interestingly,
yeah,
yesterday I was in a symposium uh, focusing on financing for equity, black equity, right? And we had most of the DFIs, development finance institutions, at the symposium. And one of the things that came out is that um, DFI, so IDC, DBSA, IDC, ECDC in the Eastern Cape, and you name them all, they have government funding, all right? And they technically, yes, they are not banks, all right, but they finance projects, right? And most of them leverage government money to fund government projects. So some of the indications out of the room was that one, we pay tax to government, right? So you use our tax money that you
yeah,
collect through SARS, channel it back into National Treasury. National Treasury then issue all the different grants, right? Either directly to local municipalities or to the banks, so to speak, the DFIs. The DFIs loaned it out. And they ask, they want don't want a free ticket, right? And the question was, should we not maybe cap the interest of loans from any of these DFIs to maybe 2%, right? So people say we don't just want grants, but we want to have access to funding, but not at the rate at which you are lending, because it's in any case our money. All right. So it was quite an interesting discussion, all right? And IDC, DTI, all of them has been clear that look, there are regulatory issues, there are policy issues that they can't or don't have control over, and that is within the domain of the Minister of Finance, as an example, right? And these discussions should be elevated to that level there. So the key concern, coming to your question, was that we raise money through tax. That same money is loaned back to us at a rate just below what the commercial banks are loaning to us, and that they found to be a contradiction. And 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 that, they say, is then what doesn't make the country grow in terms of the infrastructure sector. That is just from an SMME perspective, and I'm not talking infrastructure only. I'm talking IT, right, etc. If you read the news of yesterday, Rebosis, right, which is one of the biggest sort of capital, not construction, but managing companies in South Africa around malls, and they black owned, right? They may be delisted from the Joburg Stock Exchange, JSE, right? Because they sit with liquidity issues, as an example, right? So now you ask yourself, so if you want to build this black industrials, etc., right? But the world and the way that capital works does not favor them, then we're setting them up through the DFIs, right, for failing. It's just a thought that came out of yesterday.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, there's definitely like I see that conflicting opinions on it, and it is a very tricky thing to manage. it's we can always make these plans, but getting down to the working level, getting the right actors and people to play, as it's a very tricky thing to manage. I was also wondering on the proposal that you made about really getting actors involved early and taking them through the process. Do you think institutions like NEDLAC is performing that role, or do you think it is also not, maybe on par what they, what role can they play in maybe a problem like this?
Look, the basic thing that came out of Dr. Machope's presentation this morning is that most of what is decided upon at national level is interacted upon and implemented at local level. So if you go
Mm.
back and Mr. Sitole was the CEO of South African Cities Network. He's been advising for quite a while now, since I know him, that the way that we structure the financing, right, of the country is wrong, because if you have a triangle, will have the broad base at the top, right, with a thin point at the bottom, and that bottom part provide 9% to 256 or 7 municipalities in the country, right? While most of it is used at national level. So he says that most of the issues at the ground are linked to this competition for funding and finance, right? So whether at net level or wherever, if the funding modality of the country also, then in my opinion, are not changed to change the triangle around that the broad base is at the bottom, and therefore most of the funding comes where it's needed, that is amongst the people, right? Then this conflicting views, conflicting aspirations will always be there. So the key thing that municipalities are sitting with, all right, they can't raise sufficient funding, because in most municipalities around the country, you have nearly what, two-thirds of the people of that municipality that form part of the ATTP process, the assistance to the poor, right? People that do not have a regular job, all right, they don't have all the skills that are needed to make them employable, etc. So if you then only provide 9% of the fiscus, and I know this is just theoretical, possibly from my perspective,
Mm.
if you then provide 9% to 257 municipalities, right? And we're talking billions, right? Is that not the bottleneck that we should change around, right? Because as long as we are in competition for money, all right, at local level, these contradictions and conflicts that we see will persist. So Netleague, I
Yeah.
think uh, they don't operate at local level. They operate at policy level, all right? So unless the policies are not changed to benefit those on the ground better, right, these contradictions will exist for quite a long time.
Yes, it is a very interesting point. And do you, is it? Are you proposing more like I know the US system is more like a federal at the top, and at the state level they have their own funding, and they're a lot more autonomous, also financially autonomous at the state level. Are you taking this from inspiration from other systems around the world? Um,
Not necessarily from other systems. In the US has got, they the continent with 50 different states, right, and each states
mm,
has got some kind of independence. If we look at our provincial systems, right, and in terms of the way that we've put together our democracy, all right, we possibly don't want to go that way, although the Western Cape is
mm,
proposing that that is the way that they would want to go, total independence from the rest of South Africa, all right. So I think it's a very controversial uh, sort of aspiration, or that they have, because I'm not sure whether the decision or the idea of sort of a federal state, all right, is in the best interests of South Africa, looking at the history that we come from, all right. But no, I'm not proposing that. Rather, what I'm proposing is that the allocation of funding, all right, at different levels should
mm,
be apportioned for the purpose of that level. And as an example, a lot of people will tell you that they don't believe in provinces, right? provinces becomes and I'm talking now as government, province becomes a conduit between national and local. And a lot of people will tell you that there isn't a lot that province or provinces are doing, or provincial governments are doing, other than becoming funding sort of distributors, right? And because they don't have an effective role to play other than certain sector departments that sit at provincial level, all right, that becomes part of a bloated state. And if that is reallocated, that at provincial level we only have your sector departments like Department of Education, Department of Health, etc., instead of a full government, right, that can be generated into local level, that make funding availability at local level uh, sort of broader, and therefore the competition between neighboring municipalities, right, for similar resources then becomes lesser, and therefore they can serve and service the people more. The indication this morning from Jonathan first was that uh, there is no way that we've got sufficient funding as government, right, to do all the services at local level. All right. But my
Mm.
proposal then is that if we look at this three-tiered system, right, we must see where are funding that are not needed at any part of it that should rather be channeled to the bottom, and that is to local level.
Yeah, okay. Understand your perspective better, and for me, it sounds like a very interesting plan, and yeah, it gives a lot of interesting insight. You guys also free to come share your opinions too, and just come jump on stage if you have something to add or if you don't agree. I posted a new link in the chat to a new Mentimeter. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Eldred, and everybody also in chat. Yeah, what do you think is the possible blind spots or unintended consequences? Ah, the presentation just got off. Let me just see if I can present again. It just cut out. Uh, okay, I think it should be back up now. Yes, yeah, people can add yeah, just the possible blind spots and unintended consequences we are not considering when we are making these plans for certain developments of these two like, of projects. When we think back to these two case studies that we looked at, like what can be the different stakeholder needs and interests and the multiple diverse perspectives that can come in, and maybe also let's think about the power play issues and conflicts, and then maybe the inability that maybe at a municipal project level that we have to manage these projects. If people can maybe share their opinion on that.
Is it to the people, Paul, or to me?
Yeah, everybody. But if
Okay.
no, I think maybe we can
If
carry on with that.
yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah,
if I can take a stab at that, all right. I had an
yeah.
interesting discussion last week with a different group of professionals, and the question that came out: what do we plan for? So you hear this concept, for instance, of a smart city, right? So somebody said that it's unlikely that you will tint your bathroom windows, right? So that analogy means that a place of non-importance you will not elevate beyond its level of importance. What do we then mean with it? So when we plan, do we plan for politicians, for a political party, or for the people? So there's something inherently wrong in the way that we do our IDPs, right? I've been part of an IDP system for quite a long time in my life. So counselors will sit as a cluster and say, these are our needs within our community, and they belong to different parties. Now, I had the opportunity at one stage to work with three different parties within the same municipality that had this different wards allocated to them, right? And the similarities of the parties was quite strange because Uh, the 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 way that IDPs work is then for them to decide what they think is part of their party manifesto. And based on that manifesto, they then get some kind of projects. And then they take that to the community and say, this is what we think should happen. In most cases, it's not the broader community that come, it's mostly those that are affiliated to the party. So technically what happens at local level is a collection of party ideas and not a collection of community needs, right? And that is one of the blind spots that we're missing, right? So there's this idea of a one plan, right, which I think you're possibly familiar with. It's then to see how do we integrate what is happening at province and at local level into one plan, getting different parts of this to be implemented at whichever level. And therefore, then having, let's call it one pot with the money for these projects as an example. All right. So it's a noble idea, it's a good idea, but people are asking those that criticize the one plan is that we don't even get our IDPs right to get the real aspirations of our people on the ground. How are we going to merge what should come out of IDP and what should be from our sector departments into one if our current system is failing? So the question was rather, should we not look at what are then the blind spots that you are referring to within our IDP? That means our planning process, rather than find a new plan, but we have not addressed our current fault lines within our current plans.
Yeah, it sounds like a very yeah. You're integrating all the viewpoints from municipal level and everybody coming together to make one uniform plan to get everybody on board. I know the session is running a bit short. Would love to comment more on it. I just want to handle this Q&A here. Silla asked, how will the borrowing that occurred during COVID-19 affect the infrastructure investment projections presented by Dr. Uh, Ramu Khofa? Sorry if I said that wrong.
Ramahoboy.
Yeah, Ramu Khofa.
Obviously, the fluidity of the country has been affected because if we had to channel a lot of our money towards COVID and then to what happened in July in KZN, all right, then obviously the fiscus is poorer in terms of what needs to come to the local level. All right. So how we recoup that is possibly a difficult and difficult thing to in a minute or two to describe. But that is where the role of the private sector comes in. The private sector do have money, right? They have continued, right? Despite COVID, despite what happened, right? They are somehow de-risked because they've got insurances that pay them, etc., and government assisted here and there and so forth. The mechanism of getting private sector into our local spaces, that mechanism is not available to us. So when we come then to the question around funding, when we lost money, it's difficult to regenerate that money back to where it was before COVID, before the July uprisings. But the private sector, being de-risked from processes like this, has got the capital. So we must find the right instruments to bring them on board. If it means, like the president said, that we have to open up our spaces, that means local spaces for private development, meaning open spaces where there's developable land. All right. And if we have to lease land to them for a set period of time, that will fill up the rates, taxes, etc. And through that process, regenerate some kind of funding back into the fiscus. I know it's a simplistic answer. It's
Yeah,
not as
yeah,
easy
yeah.
as that, but I mean, it's something to ponder.
Yes, it sounds like a bit like the model they run there in China, where kind of, if I'm getting it right, if I'm understanding right, municipalities lease land and they get revenue also from that. But definitely, we're talking about the private sector involvement is a very key and interesting aspect to take into account. Um, yeah, I think we're running close. We're running close out of time. You're free to just quickly add maybe three keywords you took away from this discussion. I posted the second Mentimeter link in the chat. Um, yeah, be very cool to visualize everybody's ideas around this. And then, yeah, there's another question in the Q and A. And what is the views on insourcing as a form of sustainable jobs by the government?
Um, I'm also a scholar of sustainability. All right, so I can tell you the Earth, all right, with us as people on here can't sustain itself. All right, and a lot of people will possibly criticize me for my views. So I don't think there's anything like a self-sustainable system. All right, it's important for people to have jobs, and it is so that people feel more protected in government because there's certain policies that prevent quite a number of things that normally happen in the private sector. All right. So I'm of the opinion that the indication that government is not an employer or does not, it only becomes a catalyst for the private sector to provide employment. I differ with that because the exorbitant fees that we pay to outsourcing, all right, because there's a conduit in between government and those, right, that seek employment, and that conduit money, if that are taken away, there's no reason then to employ a manager to have, or a supervisor to have these people insourced into the government system. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, it sounds like I see everybody is else who has their opinion is free to add. Also take your questions here from the Q and A. If you're brave enough, you can also come join us on stage and also join in the discussion. But I think we have run out of time. Sorry, I can't. I don't think I have time to grab this last Q and A. But I do thank for everybody's time, and Dr. Eldred, thank you for coming on stage and helping to chat about this and facilitate. And thank you very much for your insights. It was very enriching.
Thank you,
And thank
Paul,
you
and all the
everybody for joining.
participants. Keep well. All right. Thank you. Tada. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
How do I get off stage? Oh.
I think Charlotte can take you off stage. Okay. We can leave this session then.